Finally, we are not that too late, but thank you everyone for joining. Very good afternoon. I know this is quite a hectic day for people, those who are following, those who are working in the food and agri sector. But good afternoon everyone, and warm greeting from Belem. My name is Vikrant Srivastava. I'm the global coordinator of the global flagship initiative on food security, which is one of the presidency initiative launched at the UNCCD COP Presidency 16. And we are very honored to be join us in the session, Dr. Elisa, who will be sharing her insights, and we will be also hearing her views on the reflections that we will be sharing with us in the session later. And this session is all about on discussion that we had in the beginning of June, where we got an opportunity to know that there is something coming upon which will talk about the human right aspect of the agribusiness, food security and human rights. And we did a joint consultation together with Yango, official constituency to UNFCCC, with AYAS, the world largest student association on agriculture, and with Flagship. And over the past few months, we have seen there has been so many incredible people, young people, but also at the same time young farmer, indigenous, and young entrepreneur, researcher, and activists from all across majorly global south and of course north have shared their live experience with us, and also some concern which we'll be sharing with you, and also some of the solutions and ideas. So today it's all about sharing what we have gathered together. And I think the rain is also celebrating this. So today, let me also briefly share the context of it and why this consultation was important. Not just because it has been done by the OHCHR, but why we did it. Why did it from our end? Why we try to collect all inputs together. This is one of the very few UN human rights process where live experience from the farmer, young people, network, indigenous community, and agribusiness entrepreneurs are taking part, helping to shape the report which will come next year. And also for many young people, this was also an opportunity that we are able to facilitate. And this consultation is also about channelizing collective effort to provide inputs to the report. And there is a lot of things that is happening, from climate shock to land barrier to exclusions of governance, to also the fact of reality how much the land rights also falls in the woman when we talk about. So we are trying to consolidate input together, and this is where we will be sharing this to you. And at the end, we also wanted to see that the structure mechanism to bring from the live experience that we have gathered together on the global human rights, on the governance of it. And in response, finally, we are able to end the consultation, which will end tomorrow, and we will have a final report which we'll be sharing publicly to all of you. And we hope that this will directly feed in the joint submissions to OHCHR ahead of 1st December. To present the survey finding, we have with us Anya Saltamas. So I will like to call Anya to please come on the stage and walk through us some of the core findings and also the data trends that you have gathered together, some of the human rights challenge that you have faced and you have read that came across, and also at the same time what are the youth priorities for this report that you have found. So over to you, Anya.
Okay, I hope you can all hear me above the rain, but I guess that's a sign of one of the things we found in our report. I'm really excited to bring you a really important piece of work that has been really made by a consultation from global youth in food businesses, food security, young farmers, indigenous youth, researchers, frontline communities, activists and youth-led organisations across both the global south and the global north. And it's only really through these insights of people's lived experiences that we can really see how precarious food and agriculture is in the changing climate. So we're seeing a lot of urgency and frustration throughout, but we're also seeing a lot of hope. So that's what we're looking to find the solutions in. If we can understand the structural, environmental, social and economic challenges that are shaping the food system today, we have the potential to act proactively and to shape our own climate resilient futures. So there are a few key themes that emerged from this consultation. And the main dominating theme was this huge accelerating breakdown of ecological stability. Youth described droughts, unpredictable rain, soil degradation, increasing pest and disease outbreaks, and severe flooding. It's not a distant worry. It's already being faced daily, and it's threatening food security and livelihoods. Traditional farming methods that have worked in harmony with the land are being disrupted because farmers can no longer trust the seasons and have to continually rebuild after every disaster. Youth are also facing a systemic exclusion from agricultural opportunities. There's a huge lack of financial or educational support for young farmers. We're left without access to land, technical knowledge or finance for basic input costs, while the markets we're entering are so weakly supported. If we don't have structural reform, young people are being unsupported at every step, and farming is so rarely financially viable. The barriers are not just an on-the-ground issue. Youth are constantly excluded from policy design, official representation posts, meaningful consultation, and programs that have all these prerequisites for input. It's not possible to gain access to meaningful decision-making spaces if we are constantly deemed inexperienced. There must be permanent, institutionalized pathways for youth to not only participate in, but lead the discussion on national and global food systems governance. Yes, we're young, but our inexperience should not keep us stuck. We need capacity building and access to knowledge that can help us build sustainable food systems. This must be based in knowledge sharing between intergenerational, youth-to-youth and South-South dialogues and exchanges that mentor our youth in soil restoration, water conservation and climate resilient practices that are based in an already existing knowledge of the land from indigenous land stewards, as well as in innovation and research into continuing adaptation to climate circumstances. And we must also recognise how the climate is disproportionately impacting the most vulnerable sectors of society and those on the front lines, like our rural youth, women farmers, indigenous communities, conflict-affected populations, and the poorest in society. We need to put our efforts into localised agriculture that could allow for youth to have agency and to reach food sovereignty despite this structural neglect. If we can take control of our own circumstances, livelihoods and food systems. It was so beautiful to read all this through people's real community stories and lived experiences. I put it so shortly here, but this report is built on real people's lives and circumstances. So, our priorities are here, built from a tapestry, first and foremost from people's real struggles and hopes. We must ensure formal youth representation in agriculture and climate policy. We must invest in the youth-led agriculture and climate innovation. We must build resilient food systems through soil, water and land restoration and expand access to finance, markets and inputs. We need to create platforms for the youth to lead, to have capacity building and knowledge sharing. And we need to protect our most vulnerable communities and reduce these inequalities in access to resources. We're not asking for symbolic representation, but structural inclusion, real investment and sustained pathways to participate and lead. We're not the future stakeholders. We're the current solution to the current crisis in our food systems.
Thank you, Anya, for that powerful overview. The lived reality of young people are facing from the climate shock, not because we are in Amazon, but this is a climate shock. And also exclusive of the policy making that we are seeing in all of the negotiation. And at the same time, the economic barriers. So we have rightly highlighted, and it's been clearly reflected across the region. Now we will move to a short reflection from youth perspective who have embodied the consultation finding. And I would like to three amazing speakers, and also I can call them my friend, Christopher Batman from EAS, Stefano Sempio from Yango, and Dr. Sausan Al-Hawadi, founder of Impact Foundation. I know this is a really busy day for you all three, and I have been chasing you, and I'm also running myself. So, but thank you for taking out the time. And I have a quick one question separately for each of you, and then we'll move forward to hear Dr. Elisa. Christopher, starting from you, you have been part of this survey. You have supported this survey, and I would like to understand from EAS, from the perspective of young agriculture student and emerging researchers especially, what part of today's food system do you see youth most motivated especially to transform, and what makes that area so urgent?
Thank you very much, Vikrant, for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for all of you for attending. Hello, hello? Okay. So youth today and emerging researchers, I believe, are most eager and excited to work at the nexus of agricultural food production, climate resilience, and human rights, and are really seeking opportunities to transform the sector from that middle ground. Young people see clearly that food production does not exist in isolation, right? Climate shocks are happening all over the world. We see pest pressures impacting farmers, water scarcity, growing seasons drastically being reshaped in just a few years' time. And these are really drastic measures that have ripple effects around the world and throughout communities. At the same time that these climate shocks are happening, the people who produce our food, so these smallholder farmers, indigenous communities, and rural youth, are most often the people impacted by these situations and are the least equipped to face them. Within these spaces, youth are then stepping into the decision-making and leadership roles to solve these crises. I see that across EAS and other youth networks, there are a lot of actions being taken to solve these and then transform these systems, right? Whether it's promoting regenerative agricultural practices that restore soils and increase carbon sequestration, or developing climate-resilient technologies that stand up to drought and flooding, or perhaps it's in the advocacy space, representing equity for land access, fair markets, to inclusive food policy spaces, and youth inclusion. What makes this so urgent is that this generation is inheriting a food system under immense pressure. And they're witnessing collapsing ecosystems, rising production costs, and widening inequalities. But they're also seeing the opportunity to begin to design systems that are not only productive, but just, resilient, and future-proof. So when we talk about youth motivation, it isn't just about a single issue. It's about creating solutions that protect the climate, ensure fair livelihoods, and keep global food systems stable. That is the intersection where young people feel the most motivated to work, and where I'd encourage all of us to take action day to day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christopher. You have rightly mentioned youth as a part of the transformation system. This is not because the population of the youth, we have maximum almost in every country, but also in country where I come from, India, and also Southeast Asia. I have seen so much of my friends in South Africa. This maximum number of people, those who are working in agriculture, are from the youth, you know. And we are seeing a diversion now. They don't want to get in because of the so many challenges that we will be also sharing in our consultation. So thank you, Christopher, for really highlighting youth as part of the transformating system. But you have also talked about the climate event and justice as one part. So where it comes, Stefan, you have been working with Yango, especially on intersections of the climate justice, territorial right, and youth activism in Amazon, where we are right now. Tell us, is this rain natural? First question. And why do you think young people are trying to protect the most in the local food? I love the local food of Pelham and the land system. So over to you, Stefan.
Is it working? Okay. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm glad to with these amazing speakers to have this opportunity to talk about land systems, food systems. So yes, this rain is completely natural. Actually, it happens every afternoon, so I guess the guys here at top might be used to it already. We call it the rain of the 2 p.m. And when it comes, we say, here she comes, the rain. So we plan ourselves to before the rain and after the rain. That's something very interesting that happens here in Belém. But to answer the question, I thought a lot about what you said during the day, and something that I think it's really connected to Amazonian perspectives is that what people are trying to protect the most in local food and land systems, especially here, is life itself. So the food and the land struggles here in the Amazon, they are not dissociated from climate justice as a whole, and we can discuss it not only in Latin America but also in Southeast Asia and in Africa as well. We need to discuss the land system and the food, the agricultural business as something that is connected to climate justice. So for youth, this defense of food and land systems is not just a political stance, it is an affirmation of existence. It's something for us that's very deeply connected, ingrained with what we've been working alongside for generations now. And to discuss food is to discuss life. That's why we refuse to accept that our territories here in the Amazon can be treated as zones of sacrifice or zones that are majorly impacted by agricultural business, major agricultural business. It's important for us to discuss and to rethink what is our model for agricultural business, especially the familiar ones, the local ones. We need to enhance them. We need to push them. And here in Brazil, here in the Amazon, the numbers of deforestation are majorly caused by fires that have the objective to turn land into land for agriculture. So we need to rethink that as a model. And that's something that it impacts young people as well. Because young people across the Amazon are fighting to protect the right to discuss how food is produced, who controls the land, and who it ultimately serves. So that's something that's on our agenda and on our discussions. And this struggle is inseparable from global climate justice agenda. When we as youth defend our food systems and land systems, our local land systems, our indigenous land systems, we expose the contradictions that emerge from climate negotiations that are over here talking about emissions targets, but we ignore the violent land grabs, the deforestation, and dispossession embedded in the current economic order. So it's a systemic issue. And we demand that climate finance reach real people on the ground, real people on the local food systems, real people on the agriculture, familiar agricultural systems, those who are the ones who are responsible for keeping the forest standing, and those who are also facing the impacts of climate breakdown. In doing so, we as young people in the Amazon, we are not only protecting life locally, but also redefining what global climate action really should look like. I think that's something that COP really is learning from us, from our youth here in the Amazon, and something that all other discussions on food and agriculture should learn from. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefano. Thank you for sharing the Amazon perspective. And thank you for standing and fighting and refusing to accept that is not injustice. And I hope the COP, which is called People COP, deliver that we are all looking forward to it. Uh, I would like to move to Dr. Sao-san. This is also rightly placed that you have to speak after Stefano because he talks about the work a lot. And I know that you have been working around educating a lot of young people in your region, especially in MENA, and where your foundation is based, especially on education, resilience across the arena. I know you have been also very active in the land and UNCCD processes. And wanted to quickly ask you what approaches have you seen, especially that truly gives young people the agencies to shape food and land system from your experience, rather than just simply participating, come and speak as a speaker, but, truly what helps them.
Yeah, I have a good story about that, by the way. First, thank you for this invitation, and I always see all this event. It's an opportunity to share our perspective, our background, our education background. I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I hold a PhD in climate policies from Egypt. And from Egypt, I manage my foundation, Impact Foundation for Environmental Work. And also I live now in Saudi Arabia, and I work as consultancy director in a big consulting firm in Saudi Arabia, working with all ministries like Environment Ministry and Youth Ministry and so on. But now I don't want to talk from this perspective. I want to talk with my perspective back to my childhood in a very small village in Nile Delta in Egypt. I born in very small village. My family was working in agriculture, of course, but we forced to immigrate from our land, from our village, to go to another city because of all lands affected by climate change, and all agriculture is very damaged year after year. My family and my uncles and my grandfathers, all of them working in agriculture. Me and my generation don't know anything about this legacy. We forced to immigrate from our legacy and our land. I will get a little bit emotional because I still feel the texture of the land under my bare feet when I was walking in the land, and I felt so hard and so dry without any water because of the very much drought happened in my village. So my father invested in my education, and he told me you should educate till you know what happened in our family land. You must educate environmental science. You must be and hold a PhD in environmental science. And year after year, he asked me, did you know what happened to our land? Did you know what happened to make our land this dry like this? And we lost all of our legacy. We were a big family in this village, but now all of us in different city and different place. I have cousins whose girls forced to marry when they very young, 11 and 12 years old. You can imagine this. My father was very aware person, and he take us and invest in our education, but that's not the way for all the children in this country. And by the way, I'm from Middle East, and we are a little bit different from you guys. We don't have the same rights. We don't have the same things we can talk. So from my perspective, from my experience, I don't accept that's what happened to me to be and happened with another child in any place in any country. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sausan. Thank you for sharing the beautiful story. And I can definitely relate to, I come from a farming family, and we used to farm. we used to farm. The reason I'm saying we used to farm because the city where I come from, it happens to be border of Nepal, and it is on a high altitude, and we live in a low altitude. So everywhere where when there is too much of the rainfall, there is an international entity we're still finding out. They used to open the gate of the water and it flows directly to the cities these are down. So after 20, 15 years of suffering. So my family chose to, relocate. So I can definitely share this story with you. But I really miss, now I live in city, but I really miss, if that would have been not happened, I would have a chance to go and I would have a village to spend some time. But I hope in future, not me, but the young generation should have. So thank you for sharing that beautiful story, and thank you everyone, especially, you have shared such a clear and honest insight, which is very rare to hear. And you sharing your lived experience is what exactly this whole consultation was about. So thank you so much, Christopher, Stefan, and Dr. Sausan. Yeah, we'll take together family picture. Oh. We will also need one picture with Dr. Elisa, and now you have heard different perspectives. You have heard people who are young, who is working, who is a student. You have heard story of Amazon, and I'm sure you have been hearing story from Amazon from 2 weeks, I guess. But especially as a young people, and now you have also heard experience from employee perspective. So we would like you to hear now to reflect, of course, on some of the stories that you heard, but also on how you see youth inputs, to shape the consultation that you are looking forward to, inputs that you are looking forward, and would also love to hear a story, maybe a short story, a background, how this has all happened, why this is something important that hasn't been come till now. And now we are fortunate this is coming from you. Then why and how it came from. So maybe just over to you, Dr. Elisa Morgera. And we will definitely have a family picture with Dr. Elisa.
Thank you so much. I'm actually here more to learn from you than to share perspectives. But just to explain maybe where I'm coming from. So as UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Climate Change, I collect evidence of different kinds, so look at like academic literature, indigenous science, lived experiences, research papers like the ones you presented. And I try and have as many people, particularly from different regions, contributing either in writing or through conversation like this, but maybe also we can follow up with organizing a virtual conversation to involve more of the broader networks that you're familiar with or they think they should be involved. And then I prepare a report which is presented to the Human Rights Council, and it's about understanding what progress we've made in addressing climate change in the food system, so agriculture, but also fisheries, aquaculture, if there's new elements of science and some thinking about tipping points, about the Amazon, but other aspects of tipping points that are really relevant for addressing climate change in the context of the agricultural system. And crucially, what are, for instance, I think many of you said, youth-led initiatives. What would be really interesting is to even provide more details. What are these initiatives, how they came about, what enabled them to happen in the first place, what kind of funding, what kind of partnerships, what went well, what went wrong. And I think there's a lot that can be learned for others if they want to support the same kind of work. So at the moment I have an open call for written inputs. That's open until mid-December, but I think I'll postpone to end of January because many of you are here busy and then we have to also rest a little bit. But the questions are which aspects of science I should draw upon. You should know that the Special Rapporteur on Right to Food already wrote several reports on climate change and right to food. I'm really trying to maybe bring more elements of science that haven't been covered yet. I think the aspect of soil health, microbes, these are aspects that have not been covered yet. But also my previous reports have been looking at fossil fuels and what it would mean if we really phase out fossil fuels. What would our agricultural systems, what would they look like if we are moving away from a dependency on fossil fuels? And equally, if you already have agricultural systems that maybe are completely independent from that, how they can be combined with renewables. And of course, there can be tensions and there can be synergies. And finally, I'm also very interested in carbon markets. Of course, carbon markets are not just about the agricultural sector, but I think there's a really important element there. There is a lot of evidence, unfortunately, of when carbon markets don't work for some of the reasons you mentioned. There's no real partnership. There's no real free, prior, and informed consent. Very often, even well-intentioned actors don't really engage with farmers, with small-scale fishers, with youth in ways that really allow them to understand what the project is and how it may impact them positively and negatively. And then there's, of course, a bigger question of whether those carbon markets are really effective. And we have quite a lot of science and great literature showing that we have big doubts about whether this really contributes to mitigation or not. So we really need research to understand when can this work and what are the mistakes that maybe we keep repeating. So I will keep writing this report until the end of March, which means that maybe in February we could arrange other virtual conversations if you like. Bikram has my contact, so we can work through him if you like. But otherwise, there's also many other organizations here that have a lot of knowledge. We have some in the room. So I just want to maybe open the conversation. I guess we have 10 minutes now, but just curious about whether you think there's certain questions I should look into, certain things that you have read or heard that you are interested in, hopeful, concerned. What do you think are the things that I should learn about, or who I should talk to, or anything from your own work that you think should be mentioned in this report? So I'll open the floor. Happy to see if anyone wants to jump in. Don't be shy. I'm at very early stages, so I'm on a learning curve. Great. Please go ahead.
So, well, microphone's really loud this time. Okay, so something that's been very interesting, it's also connected to what we've been working in Pororoca, my collective, is we've been working with these grassroots movements here in Brazil, and some of these grassroots movements, especially the landless workers movement, they deal with a lot of issues regarding to land struggles, and that connects to food. But specifically here in Brazil, and specifically here in Belém, the state of Pará, and the department, there's this major participation, there's this major presence of the landless workers movement, and they are really engaged in strengthening the food system here in the state. So how it connects, how there's this, how it's tied, it's something really interesting because they're not necessarily integrated into the economy or the economy notions as other major companies are, but they're still present here. We do have these small businesses that are fueled by their resources, and we have major lands here in the state that are not only preserving, actually maintaining their own food system, but also amplifying another regions, producing a lot of food, and how can I say this? They're like also preserving the forest and the biodiversity of the region. So that's something that might be interesting to read about because they've been making numbers on preservation or climate justice as well, and really they are an example of a green initiative, a real green initiative that comes from the ground up. That's something that I'd love to see being analyzed, studied, especially by those who are here. And yeah, that's it, I guess.
Maybe we can take one or two and then you can reflect it.
Hello, I'm Helena from IAS Belgium, so the International Association of Students, but I'm based in Belgium. We recently have been really interested in if we talk about human rights and food security, a lot of it has been like, okay, we need to provide food to regions and stuff, but then we have this thing now that's global, global diets, like everyone is eating the same and it's not really healthy in a lot of states, or like when I came here, the first things that I saw was Pizza Hut, for example. It was like, where is this like local nutritious food that is like healthy, and we have right to have that, and our culture with that we're now losing. So looking more in diversification again of food, and more like sovereignty of food, instead of like we need to feed the world with the 5 main sources of production we're doing. So I think that is also something really interesting to look at. And then we have students all over the world, and if we then talk to our Gambian students, they say like, yeah, it's all nice, all these things and stuff, but we don't even have electricity for a blender to make a smoothie. Like, this is an ongoing struggle for us to preserve our food or to prevent food waste in that way. So also looking at that interconnectedness of like how energy and food production in rural areas, so they cannot even bring their products to the markets. So they've been completely like outcompeted in the cities by these big industries instead of their own local food systems that they had. So also looking in how that shaped as a right. And then lastly, if I may, the language barriers. I'm really glad that EIS joined this movement, because what we do, if we see this form, for example, that we made, the form itself is in English, but the outreach that we do it in the local languages, and we think that's really important, because to connect rural youth, you need to speak the language they are speaking. And I think maybe also for the future, that's very important to always think about, to be inclusive, that you use the language youth are speaking.
Anyone else? Okay. Yes, I guess OHCHR. Do you guys want to share something?
I don't want to interrupt either, so that's why. But then we're like, maybe we're missing out.
We were just discussing that she mentioned on when she arrives and she looked at local foods, and I mentioned to her that here at COP, at the venue, Belen's local foods weren't first allowed. We faced this issue where they deemed that our local foods weren't hygienic enough or safe enough for consumption. And then there was this major riot here in the city, major frustration from everyone we're host city. So that's something necessary. And then it was allowed. So that's something to think about when you're discussing food and human rights.
Thank you for question.
No, that's great. I mean, I guess I was just wondering if the cases you were mentioning are already documented in some way, if there are reports online that can be shared. And also maybe you have your own views, whether those reports are good enough, or we need, if I understood well, you think there should be more critical analysis. I mean, I should say, because of the, as special rapporteur, this is a supposedly part-time, it's not part-time, but it's definitely a pro bono position, and the time to prepare the reports is very short. So I don't have I'm an academic researcher, so this is not the kind of research I would do in my day job, which is now my night job. It's more relying on other trusted sources that can do that analysis, or having conversation, or we can bring experts in. So that could also be interesting to hear from you. If I were to organize a virtual consultation where you're like, can you bring in somebody from IPCC? Can you bring somebody who's working on tipping points? Can you bring a plastics expert or a health expert? These are things that I can do through the networks, and I think I've done in the past. And this is how everybody in the virtual room learns a lot. And we build our capacities to do some of the critical understanding that maybe would take us a whole other PhD to do. That doesn't mean, we shouldn't do that work later on, but for the purposes of the reports, it's one way to make sure at least we're all aware of existing knowledge and also see if we can pick on each other's brains and maybe have more access to experts who are not part of these conversations yet. And what has happened in some of the earlier work is that then you also build new partnerships, new knowledge networks. So you realize, you know what, I'm interested in nutritious foods, and there's a whole alliance, for instance, on climate and health. And I've been asking them already, can you bring together some of the health experts that can teach me and maybe others about nutrition and what is that linkage with climate change and agriculture. I think the aspect of access to energy, of course, has also multiple health implications. So we're really interested to connect that with the economics. Sorry. So yeah, so just to say, on the one hand, managing expectations, my reports don't necessarily advance the research, but they bring together research, and by doing that, sometimes they show that maybe we have some blind spots in some of the existing work, or maybe there's opportunities to bring together more areas of knowledge that we have. And through that, to realize there was a barrier there to more effective climate action, to more effective human rights protection that we hadn't seen in our existing initiatives. And then hopefully from then, the reports become a basis to say, well, now this is the research we need to do. And these are maybe the things we should avoid doing because we know that they've been part of the barrier before. But I was kind of curious about your point around using the language of youth. I'm no longer young, unfortunately. So I'm just wondering if you have any examples, or are you thinking like a youth version of my reports? What I've done so far with some support is have child-friendly versions of the reports. But yeah, I'm curious to hear.
Well, for example, I had an interview today with my Belgian news thing, but I'm from a rural side, so I have a very, very strong accent, and I actually am way more comfortable speaking in English about all of this than in my own national language because of my accent, and I can't lose it in the thing. But then I was thinking, like, if they go from Brussels to, because I'm from Belgium, to the rural side, and they would explain what all this is, they would also not understand the youth there. And the thing is, like, if you would ask a lot of rural youth, what is UNFCCC, what is all these things, they don't understand that. So it's more like bringing it in a simplified way, like this thing can really showcase what we need to sustain ourselves for the future. It can really need the problems you're facing and like, or the worries you have about food in your own country, in your own, if it's a city desert, because there are a lot of cities that are food deserts, but it's also a lot of rural areas that don't have a diverse diet anymore because it's just all the same production. So really like bringing it to them in their own dialect or thing is something that we also believe in with our association, and that's why we have like think globally but act locally. So always like these global ideas, and the UNFCCC, very important to engage in, but then bringing to the local action, bringing to what they understand, and that's something you can't do alone. So I'm glad that you brought Yongo in here, that you brought the people who know how it feels on the ground that can support you with this. So I don't think, maybe if you want to have the report, like let it review to youth as well, like make sure that they can see like, and I mean even not me anymore because I've been in the system too long. Like I understand this language now, but let it read to someone who maybe it's their first time, and then they can say like, oh, but I actually don't understand this or that way.
Yeah, thanks so much. I wonder if there are any questions, ideas, anything you want to throw at me so that I can keep thinking about how to do this.
I think one of the things that we are doing, so within the Yangon, I mean, I can speak on behalf of Yangon now, but what we did is that we also organized local conference of youth, which is now, in this year, we have 104 local conference of youth, which means in 104 countries. And we try to make sure that there is an inclusivity element that is being added. For example, in India, we have officially more than 30 plus language. Unofficially, it's like more than 300-400 language. So we have used technologies, in terms of how they want to respond. For example, people who know Hindi, they respond the questions in Hindi. People who know Tamil, they respond the questions in Tamil, XYZ. So for them, it makes them easy to articulate what they want to say. And then we use a lot of now there is a lot of free technology, and we use them to translate back in English and then compile together and share as a global youth statement or national youth statement. Now global youth statement has also been endorsed by presidency from more than 40 years now. So this is something it can also be put into as one of the options to open, because many of the African countries, they speak French, they don't understand English, and at the same many of the other countries in Latin America, they also don't understand English. So how you are also open at the same time, to receive those inputs. So is this something that's been already been done? So if not, so how? Because now you have mentioned that this report will be extended till February end. So this is something that could also be added, and child friendly would definitely be an option, but also when there is insight, it could be a youth friendly, in terms of how the word is coming from, in terms of safeguarding, how they read it, how they acknowledge, and how they can use those reports to advocate in their country, in their subnationals, because many of the times, when the youth face challenges with their local government authorities, national authorities, they refer these reports only, reports which has been led by UNICEF, UN, or the UN agency. So that how that can also be, acknowledged or maybe, thought for.
Yeah, I mean, again, you might be aware of the UN budget crisis. That's definitely hitting the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. So the reality is that I have no resources to do the things on my own, but I can work in partnerships. This is how these children-friendly versions came up. It's a university, a law clinic, in fact, so prepared children versions. Then they went to secondary schools to pilot them. Then, for instance, the Alana Institute here in Brazil, translating them into Portuguese. And of course, there's a back and forth. I need to make sure that the messages are correct. But that can be something in partnership if there's interest, if there's resources elsewhere. If it can also be an interesting activity. So I think for the students involved in that project, they all really enjoyed it very much. And it was kind of an additional point on their CV, etc. So that's something that sometimes also comes in the conversation and consultations. I mean, particularly, I wasn't quite sure this local conference, is it something that you've done or you're planning to do?
It's already been done, just one of the process that we follow to be inclusive, more people to provide inputs. I think for now we have more than 100,000 plus inputs for this year. Last year also it was more than 100,000 plus inputs. So these inputs only able to come because it was open in different language.
Yeah, so my call is open in... so it's published in French, English, and Spanish. I guess I should say I could also read Portuguese, so maybe I should add that. Yeah, so that would be the invitation, but at least, yeah, there's some language capacity.
For the starting, at least the UN language should be part of it, at least the 6 languages.
But again, it's a question of then resources, or finding people who can perspective language translated from me. My contribution is that learned about some languages, but there's a limit to that. And for sure
That's true. Any final word? Let me add to 5 minutes of the time. If you want to say any final word.
just to say maybe if we can share the link to the written submissions, call for written submissions. And if you have suggestions, there's also an email address of any wider networks. If you want to be involved in any way, let us know. Otherwise, it's great to hear your input and you have some thinking through how to go about this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elisa. Thank you for agreeing the commitment of ensuring young people voices are being shaped. And we will definitely try to include some of this discussion in our final submission now that we know that we have some time, especially on the initiative, because I know there has been so many amazing initiatives which has been done by EAS, Young and the Flagship, and there's a network which has more than 100,000 NGOs related to triple C, but other important space within the union CCD space also. So would definitely, this will definitely help us to articulate it more better. Also try to gather some of the initiatives which can definitely help in shaping this report, but also can feed in the next upcoming relatively inputs together. So thank you so much for important reflections. And yes, with that said, we'd like to have a family photo together. And thank you again, OHCHR, for accepting our invitation, young ARs, and people from Flagship for making this event happen.